just 72 hours, a seemingly solid relationship is torn apart by doubt and betrayal. When a husband discovers his wife's affair during a business trip, he's not just heartbroken, but thrown into a relentless search for the truth. The first signs were strange messages, but when he uncovered her laptop, the truth was undeniable. Can trust ever be restored after a betrayal this massive? 72 hours. This number changed everything. This story will keep you on the edge of your seat. Keep watching to uncover the truth. My wife, 31 years old, and I, 30 years old, have known each other for 8 years and been married for 6 years. Recently, my wife went abroad on business with a few colleagues. The first few days, they all stayed at the hotel, and despite her busy schedule, she always FaceTimed me at the end of each day. Everything seems fine. I don't feel anything unusual. But on the third day, when they moved to another location to work on an important project with local colleagues, things began to change. She didn't text me all day. It was only around 11 p.m. her time that she wrote to say she was going to the sauna with her female friend V, whom she considered her roommate, come from abroad. The sauna was in their area and nothing special, but what struck me as strange was the fact that she went at a late hour after a long day. Then she wrote me again at 1:30 a.m. saying, "Go to sleep, write to me when you wake up, love you." She didn't mention anything about being tired or the reason she couldn't call, nor did she talk about what she did during the past 2.5 hours. It was all just the words she communicated every day. But this time something was wrong. It felt distant, cold, and unusual, making me feel bad. I always trust my hunches, and this time I couldn't ignore them. Even though everything seemed normal, I couldn't shake off that feeling of insecurity. She had gone on a business trip, and at this point, nothing really made me feel uncomfortable until I started to find out what really happened. She left her laptop syncing messages at home, and I was able to see everything in real time. She had a text chain with a man I didn't know. We'll call him K. The last text she sent him coincided with the one she sent me, and there was only one, the only emoji, a heart with a headband. I've never seen that symbol before and don't know what it means. So I left my laptop open while I got ready for bed. When I saw the text message from my wife saying, "Come to room 3, my heart pounded. I felt like I was falling apart, and anxiety immediately overwhelmed me. I started screaming. I cried. I felt completely broken. Even though I've been cheated on in the past, my wife is the last person I would think would do that. Even though I know my hunches are never wrong, I still can't imagine her doing something like that. I was in a previous relationship where I was cheated on multiple times, and I think I've learned to recognize the signs. My wife is completely different, or at least she's good at hiding things. I try to think of every possible scenario. Maybe room 3 is another place where they party or do something normal. But why is there only one man named K? Surely he has something to confide in, right? Maybe she asked K to come pick up V, her roommate. But why didn't V text K from the beginning? What would happen if V and my wife were in that room? Did they have any strange conversations? Was she really in the same room as V like she said? I was confused in my thoughts, and I discovered that the message from K hadn't been sent yet. An hour later, K wrote, "Going there." The message remains unread. I thought she might be sleeping, and K wouldn't knock on the door until she woke up and then wrote the letter again. But 7 hours later, the message was still unread. I forced myself to stay awake because that's the only way I can keep track of everything. And then, in real time, I saw the entire thread get deleted. I'm confused. The scenarios I had imagined in my head disappeared. An hour later, my wife sent a letter to another coworker saying she had taken K's phone and informed him of the situation. That whole day, K and my wife did not send messages to each other. A few weeks ago, my wife and I went out with a friend for drinks and met a few of her coworkers. At that time, I had just heard about K and didn't think she worked directly with him. This made me even more suspicious because I often heard more about her other colleagues. We went to a bar, we danced, and at that moment, K was holding something which my wife playfully grabbed and put in her pocket. At that moment, I had my first hunch. She acts very differently with K than with the others. When we went out, I was chatting with someone else, but she was only chatting with K. She touched his hand for too long, about 2 seconds. A few minutes later, they hugged each other. I feel angry. Last week, she worked too hard to go out with her colleagues and showed little affection towards me. But with this guy, everything is different. We went home, and I said I would sleep on the sofa. She got upset, asked me why I was acting like that, then packed her things in her bag and said she was going to the hotel. When she went out, I didn't hear the door close. She left her iPad behind and logged on to Instagram. Not proud of this, but I still have to see what's going on. I saw a thread saying she was planning to go out drinking with another guy she hadn't seen in years. But in my opinion, they were just friends. However, the topic is then deleted in real time. The feeling of insecurity makes me unable to escape. I texted her about the plan. She said he just wanted to meet her friends. I told her it was a lie. She then said that they actually had no plans at all. I told her I saw the message. She always denied it, never said it was just friends or anything. Then she turned to, "How dare you doubt me again?" And I'm very stressed at work. I'm sorry, I'm not enough. I can't be everything to everyone. I told her if I misunderstood something, she could go upstairs and we could work it out. She came, but again, didn't clarify or admit anything. And the conversation was just about her not being enough. She cried uncontrollably. I feel bad. So I went to sleep next to her. Because both of our weeks were quite busy, we don't talk about it anymore, but we plan on doing it when she comes back. The last few days before she left, we went on a date and had great sex. In the text message thread with Kay, I could see some flirty messages from both sides about her sleeping on his shoulder on the plane. There is no way they would have adjacent seats due to the way registration works. Therefore, they must move with purpose. Although since all the co-workers have been spending a lot of time together in person, it makes sense that there isn't much more on that topic. Yesterday, she went to the hotel, I know thanks to Find My iPhone. So I wait for her to write me or call me. I waited half an hour and wrote to her asking if she was still out because I was leaving. She called me and said she just got back to her room. Her neck, from the middle to the middle of her chest, was all red. I could see thanks to the clothes she was wearing, like when we were making love and my beard was short and rubbing against her skin. I asked her about it. She acted surprised as if she didn't know, and told me it could be her scarf, but this is clearly only on one side and goes deeper than a scarf. I don't want to emphasize further because I can't let her know I love her too much. I still need hard evidence. We continued talking for an hour, but she's a bit picky, unlike other days when she returned to her room and immediately got ready for bed. She always does pretty much the same thing. It felt like she was procrastinating about getting ready for bed, except for wearing her pajamas. So I kept procrastinating, trying to see if Kay would write to her or vice versa. And then I asked her about the sauna. She said she barely walked in because it was packed. Then I asked her for other details and they didn't seem to add up. At this point, I've been awake for over 36 hours, so I'm recording the conversation for better understanding later. We ended the call. I finally went to sleep. Sleeping has never felt so good. This morning I woke up and there were no messages from Kay or my wife to each other. She FaceTimed me a few hours later. Besides a quick check-in, she said, "I'll write to you whenever I can. If I don't, it's because there's a lot going on and it's hard to balance being here and there. Not because I'm doing anything else that you might think. If you've made it this far, thank you, thank you, thank you." My head has been spinning these past few days. There are so many things I'm not sure about, but divorce is always on my mind. We plan to buy a house and have a baby next year. Even if nothing happened, she still betrayed my trust by telling me she was going to bed and then inviting Kay into her room. Even if that didn't happen, she betrayed my trust by maintaining a closer relationship with Kay after I said I was uncomfortable with it. She is risking her career. I'm sure her coworkers will be suspicious of her relationship by now. And I really can't live the rest of my life seeing every little thing as a possible sign of cheating. She had 2 symmetrical bruises on her thighs that I only noticed a few days later when she went out with the coworkers that she couldn't explain. And I'm sure I didn't cause or feel forced to snoop. But at the same time, I feel this is too weak evidence to get a divorce. Our accounts got separated. The logistical reasons are too long to explain. So it's not that simple. The car is in her name. I can't threaten divorce or discuss it with her because I'm afraid she'll transfer the money and I'll have to start over. And in the end, I'm heartbroken because damn it, I love her too much. She is the love of my life, my soulmate. But I also feel like the person I love is no longer there. And it all takes just a few days. I really don't know what to do next. What if I'm wrong, editor? Now she is very flirtatious with me through text messages. She hasn't been like this for weeks. Edit 2, forgot to mention that she has been working from home since joining the company in January. So she only met her coworkers in person about a dozen times. Edit 3, I can't see what new apps are purchased on the App Store. But something happened to me. They both use Slack for work, which is much more convenient and easier to hide than starting a separate app. Edit 4, she called me back. She returned to the first location at the hotel, work in the office all day. One of the first things she told me was that her arm was bruised and maybe bruised somewhere else, but didn't really know how. I couldn't see it on camera because it was too dark. Then she said, I had bruises all over my body. Well, not all bruises, just this one. Odd. Updated November 4th below. She kept denying, crying, saying she was sorry, that she had cheated. She lied. She's such a piece of trash. She will do anything for us to be together again. She will beg. Last week I had 2 holes in my belt. I guess I'll finally have 6-pack abs. So I decided Monday would be self-care day. I went to have lunch in a small village next to where I lived without any plans, and I was fascinated by the aroma of bread and food baking in the wood oven. And I walked in and sat down. There are only 2 tables inside. The other room has 3 old ladies eating and talking. A neighbor passed by. They chat. They made me smile for the first time in a while. Reminds me of how simple things can be. Then I went for a massage. Possibly the most transformative massage I've ever had. The knot in my stomach was gone. My mind is a little clearer. I then went back to the hotel because she had sent me an email with detailed timelines earlier that day. And I still haven't read it. I sat down at the bar. Get me a virgin pina colada. Haven't had a drink since this started. I need a clear mind. I read the email. It details many aspects and checkpoints of her day, including the person she took the Uber with, when she went into the bathroom. Things like that. But the details of what matters are the same. And somehow she didn't seem to remember when she called me, or when she told me she was going to bed. All this can be easily confirmed. This is where it becomes confusingly clear. There is no coming back from this. I'm still trying, guys. I sent her an email with all 3 versions of the increased acceptance of initiating responsibility. Nothing else. And she brushed it off because these are the things I remember, and I only remember other details. I asked to see her the next day, Tuesday, and her best friend should be in there, Shanta, both to support and to be a witness. No contact is difficult. We continued to talk. I kept asking why V would open the door for someone if there was no conversation, no sign, nothing. When asked if they talk in the morning, she told me that V and K said she called me. Then she told me that V was flirting with him. Sit on his lap in the sauna, and maybe V thought it was for her. I finally did something that I thought went too far. But I'm getting anti-harassment training in the workplace, and it's so relevant that it feels like the universe is laughing at me or sending me a sign. I told her if K really came into her bed uninvited and V opened the door for him. This is a sexual harassment attack and will have to be investigated. She backed off a bit with a plea and apology. Then my wife sent me a screenshot of a text message she sent to V saying, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I need your answer about something. I said she is currently uncontactable. After a while, my wife sent me another screenshot in which V said, I was shocked by your husband's call and you dragged me into something I had nothing to do with. Please stop. I actually cried when I saw this. I think she sent me this because she was preparing to challenge you before all hell broke loose. I told her that yes, I talked to V, and that's why I asked her to keep V away from this. My wife said she would keep her out of it and not ask her anything else. I knew meeting my wife in person would be difficult, but I had to tell her how she made me feel, and I wanted to give her one last chance to say something, anything. I wrote the message because I knew I couldn't write from memory, and if I memorized it, I would be too harsh on her. So I zoomed out, told her what I had been through, the damage it caused, the pain that remained, the scars that would be left. She goes, her friends stay. Her friend asked me if she had ever lied like that before. I thought she would choose this out of character approach, but no. She told me she knew how good a liar she was. She gave me a possible explanation as to where it came from. She believes in personal development, and so do I. I told her about my ex. I told her why I couldn't go back to it. She told me that my wife lied and told her two different versions of what happened, and that made me cry. I'm glad she's here for her. That evening, my wife sent me another series of messages, implying she would delete them, asking me to send things to her parents, to send her my bank account information so she could send them to me. Everything. She then told me that she had spoken to my lawyer today. I told her that I couldn't handle everything she wrote to me and that I would read it today. Today, she told me that it's okay, I should focus on work, then asked me how work was going, if I wanted to share. She sent me an email recounting our history and all the places she disappointed me by not being enough. I had to try really hard to hold back my tears at the coffee shop. She invited me to join a shared iCloud album titled Love, not accepted yet. Now I understand why no contact is important. I will have to endure this. I will not be affected. I often read the messages between her and Kay because I tend to forget and let go, and I need to remind myself that this happened. It's true, and I know what she's going through now is legitimate, but so is what I've been going through. You all will say, this is not healthy, but that's how I know how to deal with it now. Thank you for being with me all this time. I couldn't have done this without you. There will be days when I doubt my decisions, and I will return to this crazy soap opera and your advice, encouragement, and support. Updated November 4th. Hey everyone! I know I said I don't care about the truth, but the reality is that these things randomly pop into my head when I least expect it, and I fall down the rabbit hole. I need them to remind me that all of this is real, and she can't make me think that this wasn't premeditated and that it was due to work stress, etc. This time, the rabbit hole may be the most effective. Some of you may recall one of the conversations in the original post between my wife and Kay. Conversation about books and chewing gum. Where are your books? Is it there? Maybe. You can deliver it to my room. Bad idea. I say you can. I don't know how good an idea that is. The book is already here. Glad you have it already, unless you want to give away another book. Although I think your gum is still here, I only have mine and I need to read it first. That's right. Maybe I need some gum now. Only if you go to sleep and don't cause any trouble. I will definitely go to sleep. Go get some gum. Open, I said 2 sentences. I can't stop thinking about it because they don't make grammatical sense in context. I think it was one particular user who said that sometimes in these encrypted convoys there will be nonsense. The thing is, she said he came to her room the night before the trip, but only to pick up a book he had forgotten. She said he only stayed for 5 minutes and that the book didn't fit in his backpack, but left it there, seemingly for no apparent reason. This makes me feel confused and strange. She also admitted that when she told me she was going to bed, she actually only informed me that she had arrived at the hotel but did not say anything about going out later. There. When I asked about this, she just told me that she called me about 5 minutes after she arrived. The more I think about it, the more absurd it all seems. If he really had gone there the night before to get the book back, why wait until the next day to mention it? And then I began to suspect that he had actually lost the book, and this was the excuse he used to sneak into her room. The truth begins to reveal itself. Gradually, pieces of the puzzle fit together. She asked me about the book the next night, but the question seemed like a joke. In fact, the book may not be as important as what actually happened in her room. Perhaps he went there not to get the book, but for another reason. The red marks on her neck, extending down to the center of her chest, were like a mark that couldn't be hidden. Not only that, the text messages she sent me that night had no clear explanation of what she had done. And then, she admitted that he stayed for more than 30 minutes in her room and they fell asleep on the bed. It felt like she was no longer trying to hide the truth, but instead started playing a game of manipulation, denying and then admitting. She said that nothing happened between them, no kiss, no sex, but I feel like what she said was just a lie. I waited a long time for her to realize it herself, but no, she still insisted that there was nothing wrong. I saw her trying to find a way to heal, as if she wanted to start over, even making plans for us to go to couples therapy and saying she would sleep separately. But I realized that she was trying to convince herself and those around her that what happened was nothing serious. Her attitude, her strong reaction to what I said was clearly because she felt compelled to face the truth. She may be able to convince some people, but in my heart, I know that what she is saying is not the truth. I couldn't bear the pain of thinking about how she had lied to me, manipulated my emotions, and sent me into a dark spiral of insecurity and disappointment. The next day, I received an email from her, an apology, an explanation of what she had lost. But I cannot answer. I chose to stay silent, and I knew it was for the best. That night, I went out drinking with friends to try to forget everything. But in my head, I still only think about her, about everything that happened. A panic attack came when I realized I couldn't escape the sadness, and I returned home only to dream of us crying together. That dream made me realize that I still loved her, despite everything she had done. I sent her an email telling her I missed her and believed she still loved me. But she still refused to admit the truth. She lied to me, manipulated me, and now, when I look back, I realize that all she did was protect herself, deny responsibility, and make me suffer. This pain alone. With all that going on, I sent her one last email. I said that I hoped she would find happiness with someone else who was worthy of her, and that I hoped she would achieve all that she desired in life. But I can't continue living in the mess she created. I don't hate her, but I can't continue living in this lie. I love her from the bottom of my heart, and that's the reason why we can't be together. Because if I continue to be with her, I will become a vulnerable person again. I would be lied to again, and I simply couldn't take it anymore. I won't drink anymore. Soon she responded to a request to meet in person so she could tell me the truth. I agreed, even though I knew it was probably a mistake. She went to another city where her best friend lived, and she took the train, booked a hotel room, and wanted to meet me the next day. She asked to meet in the hotel room. I knew it wasn't a good idea, but I also knew that talking in public wouldn't allow either of us to express everything we needed to say. Even though I could defend myself, I agreed to meet her. I clearly understood my feelings at that time. I knew I was gradually becoming colder. I couldn't take her home because I couldn't think of anything she could say that would change my mind or make me feel differently about all that had happened. Remember that all this time, she has rarely expressed concern or pity for me. I knew it was unlikely she would tell the whole truth, and even though I had some new questions about certain details, I didn't expect her to answer meaningfully. However, deep down, I still hoped that a miracle would happen and that she would come up with something that would help me end things and move forward. Before I walked into the hotel room to meet her, I received an email from my lawyer saying she was determined to know what I knew. This is strange. So that day before entering the hotel room, I took a video and put a tape recorder in my coat pocket to have evidence of what would happen during this meeting. When I entered the room, I told her that this was her chance to tell me the truth. But if she continues to lie, I will leave and she will never hear from me again. She started talking about what happened, but I was only interested in the parts that involved him. She stared at me, unblinking, and after each sentence, she paused as if gauging my reaction. I asked a few questions and she answered, but gradually she began to contradict what she had said before. I patiently pressed the questions again, but then I realized that there was no benefit in this. I no longer know the answer, and I can't wait any longer. I told her we would come back to this later. I asked her about her last night, about how a man could come into her room and sleep in her bed when the room was so cold. How could she sleep after sitting on the bed talking to him? She replied that he only came to talk because she couldn't sleep. When she falls asleep, he will leave, and they will both sleep separately. I asked her if she was 100% sure. She said yes. I said goodbye and said my lawyer would get back in touch. I left the hotel room without returning. From her messages, I knew that she invited him just to sleep and didn't want anything serious to happen. This cannot be denied that she intentionally created this situation to test me again. Still, after everything she did, I realized I needed to stay as far away from her as possible. After I left, she sent me a few emails, urgently asking me to come back because she had a gift for our cat. However, I decided to leave and not return. Later in the evening, she sent me another email, finally admitting that she had invited him into her room, but she explained that she just didn't want to sleep alone and had no intention of doing anything out of line. Term with him, she said the two were just chatting, then fell asleep, and when she woke him up to let him go. She said it was probably the alcohol or the guilt that took over her. But what made me feel really disgusting was when she asked him to delete all the messages between them so that no one would remember what they said. However, I was the only one with the entire conversation, and everything that happened was very clear. Finally, I realized that I couldn't continue living in this lie anymore. Even though I felt relieved to leave her, there was still a bit of sadness in my heart. But I got over this shock, and now I can move on with my life, no longer bound by the harsh truths she created. She sent me one last email admitting that she had invited him to the room. However, her story echoed the excuses, and I couldn't help but feel the lack of sincerity in her confession. This makes me even more confused about what she has been doing all this time. The feeling I have right now is one of emptiness, as if I've been deceived for a long time. How could the person I love the most do these things? I put all my trust in her and loved her with all my heart. But all she did was just an act to hide the truth. She also kept emailing me, ranting about her guilt and confusion. She wants me back, but I can't. I can't bear it anymore. Unanswered questions, unforgivable lies all gathered inside me like a storm. As I read those emails, I began to realize that, for the past 8 years, I had given everything without receiving appreciation in return. I have always been by her side, loved her, even sacrificed my family and friends to take care of her. But in the end, I was just an abandoned and deceived person. When I think about the past days and the efforts I put in, I can't understand why she betrayed me like that. Why didn't she stop before things went too far? Am I too naive to believe that she really loves me? Now my emotions were no longer deep sadness, but instead anger. I don't want to hear excuses anymore. I just want to get away from it all, forget everything and start again. I deserve a better life than this. Whatever they said, I could only imagine, but it was just as painful as hearing her voice and his share such intimacy. It was so painful, and I didn't need to relive it more. In particular, when I watched it all happen in real time via email, a specific timestamp was mentioned by the PI. I heard the recording, and the sound became faint. I think they tried to keep quiet because there were colleagues nearby, but when I turned up the volume, everything was clear. They ruined everything they did. What an irony. I've been praying all this time to hear this from her because somehow I thought it would be more comforting. But now I actually heard it from her in the most devastating way. Recently, my ex-wife sent me a long email. My feeling when reading it was both realistic, but also something a bit strange. This was the first time she didn't try to blame me, and multiple times she mentioned she was a narcissist, which made me feel like she had read about the narcissistic personality, and now she's framing things from that perspective, as if she's taking Narcissism 101. I did not reply to that email. I didn't reach out again, but the truth is it gave me some peace because this was the first email she didn't lie to or think vaguely. She said, I know you don't love me anymore, but I still love you. I will always love you. You are the biggest part of my life. No one understands me like you. No one. You have seen all the ugly parts of me, and I want to believe that you see the beautiful parts of me too. Even though the ugliness overshadows the beauty is still there. You know my heart, these my best and worst weaknesses. You know them all. Maybe you understand me better than anyone else. When I read these lines, my emotions exploded. She said that even though she was wrong, she still loved me, but this made me feel even worse. Everything was like a slap in my face when I thought I was everything to her but ended up being betrayed. She said a lot of things that I had never heard before. The words are full of love, but are they just empty words after all that has happened? I remember everything we went through. The times she helped me overcome difficulties, the times she encouraged me when I felt insecure and lost. She is the only person who can help me see the light, the only person who makes me feel valuable. But now, these things are just a thing of the past. She sacrificed a lot for us, and we built a family and a career from nothing. She is the one who taught me how to love myself and never give up. We were a strong team. But then, when things started falling apart, I realized that perhaps I had been so focused on the unimportant things that I forgot what was truly valuable. I lost myself in the chaos of narcissism and validation. And now, when everything is over, I realize that no one can love me like she did. But no matter what, I can't go back. She has changed, and so have I. We are no longer the people we once loved, but people who have lost everything we once had. But when I got home, I started blaming myself. I can't stop thinking about the words I said, about my actions. I wondered if I was too hasty in believing her compliments, the flirtations that made me feel more beautiful and sexy, even though I knew I wasn't perfect. I once lost weight because I thought I would be viewed differently and more loved. But things gradually got worse when she told me I was always beautiful, and I couldn't believe those words anymore. I started hunting for attention from others, wanting confirmation that I was still beautiful, still valuable. But even when I received that attention, I didn't feel safe, loved, or appreciated. And I know that no matter how many compliments I get, I will never feel complete, because you never did and no one else ever will. I know it's hard to believe anything I say, and I don't blame you for that. I lost all credibility. I did it to myself, but I need you to understand that everything is not premeditated. I didn't step out of line. I didn't talk to him for weeks or months before going to that country. At that time, I didn't feel anything for him. It was a mistake, an unfortunate chance, a bad decision. If he wasn't there, maybe someone else would be, but that doesn't matter. I was just looking for attention, to feel better about myself, which I call Narcissism 101. I only think about myself, not about you, not about the effect my actions will have on you. You're right, maybe I was hiding it from you, but I also know we were supposed to talk about all the hard stuff on Sunday. I was very worried, not knowing if I could share everything or not. I hurt myself and put everything in danger, but I don't know if I have the courage to talk about what happened. That's unfair, because I committed to trying everything before giving up, but instead I hurt you. You are an incredible man, no one can compare. I'm sorry that I don't appreciate you as much as you deserve. This whole email really is just a way for me to explain and hope you understand me. But I know that all the excuses don't matter anymore. She's trying to make herself feel better with these words, hoping that you'll see true remorse from her. However, what I understand is that people with great narcissism are often unaware of the impact their behavior has on others. Whether she has changed or not, I cannot believe that these apologies are sincere. It's all a way for her to ease her guilt and rationalize her actions, to feel like she deserves a second chance. But I don't think that's true remorse. It was just a justification for her selfishness, and in the end, all she did was protect herself. The reason is, true clinical narcissists make up a very small percentage of the population, and they never admit it. She is simply a selfish person with weak justifications and poor coping abilities. This, while seemingly reasonable, is not sincere. In reality, she's just egging you on to make herself look better. If you still want to continue talking to her, send her the audio and ask her to admit it. If not, simply reply that you already have the proof and see how she tries to twist things. I've been quiet for a while because posting and responding to you guys made me feel stuck in a flashback loop. There are days when I can barely do anything. But I can't continue without your support, so I sincerely thank you. I started therapy once a week, and it really worked. The gym is also very useful. I started going to the gym 4 times a week, took climbing classes, and started redecorating the house. Working from home is very difficult for me, but today is probably the first day I can focus and work with all my strength. This past weekend, I went out, but I always got home before my friends because I'm learning how to enjoy the weekend better. They like to go out and drink, but I realize that alcohol doesn't help at all. I have so much work to do to achieve my goals and become a valuable partner. However, I'm also at the point where I know that going back to her would throw away all the work I've done. I was starting to give up, and maybe my post wasn't clear, but reconciliation lingered in my head. I finally started divorce proceedings a few weeks ago and waited for the papers to be translated. When everything is complete, I will continue the process. I will update again when the divorce is final. Thank you so much for being with me throughout this process. This process is not a straight line. For some reason, my posts about infidelity were automatically flagged. Recently, she attempted suicide twice. The first time, she took 20 sleeping pills and then woke up, told her best friend she was with, and they went to the hospital. The friend called me and asked her to call me, but the hospital only discharged her because she said she was being monitored by a psychiatrist. I didn't talk to her about it, but she called a friend of mine to ask about me if he wanted to meet for coffee. A few days later, she sent me a meaningless text, like something you write when you're drunk, and then took a video of herself in the back of an ambulance. I tried to understand what happened, but she only sent me weak or meaningless audio messages. Then she told me to ask her best friend about the situation. Her best friend just told me that she overdosed again, but that she was fine and her parents had been notified. This explains a text message I received from her father abroad. I sent her a final text, asking her to write down what happened. The next day, she sent me an email with a picture of a digitally drawn note in red and blue. I can't describe my feelings when I saw it. This is the scariest email I've ever received from her. I emailed this to her best friend and asked her if she was really okay, because clearly this wasn't okay. Her best friend told me she took 3 different pills, about 30 of them, and the hospital didn't keep her because they didn't think it was a mental problem. She asked me not to respond to my fiancé because it would cause her to back off and put the divorce on hold. I agreed and we both went back to her city so she wouldn't be alone. She told me she thought it was all just to get attention and asked me to contact her if there was anything urgent. A few days later, she sent me an email saying she had tried to commit suicide and was actually close to death. Then she asked me if I had anything to say about it. A week later, she sent me an email with the opening line, "In case you've forgotten what your wife looks like," followed by a series of photos of her in the hospital in a wheelchair, then passed out on the street. I don't know what to do with all this. It feels like I'm caught up in a game that I don't want to participate in anymore, constantly spinning around in mixed emotions. A few days later, she asked me if she could continue our apartment contract because everywhere else they required a cosigner, which she didn't have. I asked her friend if I could discuss this through her since she had been willing to do that. She said they had a falling out and that my soon-to-be ex-wife was coming back to our city. I feel like she's fed up with this, but then she got angry because she contacted me. Actually, I didn't ask much, but now she sent me an email saying that she understood what divorce was like and that the only solution was for us to work things out on our own without need a lawyer. I agreed and answered what I asked for, but then she wanted us to be closer and asked me to treat her kindly. However, she didn't tell me what made her change her mind. She asked me how I arrived at those numbers, and I gave her irrefutable proof that I was actually asking for so little given all my financial contributions. And if not, she will never mention this again. A few days later, one of her colleagues on the trip called me to ask if he could help. He asked if I wanted to meet or record the conversation, but didn't know about the legal implications of this, which made me feel something was wrong immediately. I said we could talk on the phone, but when he started being vague and unclear about what he knew, I didn't feel like continuing. He said it was unlikely anything would happen because he and another person were always together. But when they all went to the sauna, the 3 of them stayed in her room. Kay said he was going to come to my house to see if I wanted to hang out, but only stayed for about 3 minutes. He talked for 20 minutes, but I didn't say much. However, I did mention her self-effacement efforts, and this might have brought to her attention that I wasn't just thinking about myself. A few hours later, she sent me an angry email, denying that she didn't do it for attention. Her next emails were all about how she didn't think she could do it, how she felt like she was trash and not worthy. She also has an appointment to renew her visa in the next month and a half, but I know only one thing stands between us now: finalizing the divorce. I felt like I was kidding myself, feeling sorry for her, and gradually softening at the thought of helping her return home until she got help. But then all the reasons why it couldn't happen surfaced. This is not an easy road. I'm going through a roller coaster of emotions. However, I realize that I am personally making progress. Even though we have broken up, I am still further along than I was 2 months ago. If these things had happened from the beginning, I'm not sure how I would have reacted. So I hope those who are having difficulty will be strong. In the end, I believe my update will be better. I am so grateful that you have been with me throughout this process. All my previous posts have not been what I expected, and this is a change I need to make. Her emails continued. The excuses, the threats, all appeared again the next time. Eventually, she started sending me recordings of her conversations with the therapist without her consent. My curiosity couldn't stop listening, but I knew that she would use this conversation to justify her actions. She wasn't wrong, but I'm the one responsible for everything. One weekend, she didn't write to me, but then wrote a lot the next weekend. I spent the whole day waiting for her to write, but she didn't write anything. A week passed, and I began to feel relieved, as if a burden had been lifted from me. The next weekend, I was cleaning the house when I suddenly wanted to listen to her recording again. I listened for an hour and felt like everything was just a game of deception. The words she said, the words she blamed for everything. In the end, she just said, "You know something about him." At that moment, I knew that I could not continue living in this deception. The next day, I installed a new dating app and started scrolling through a few profiles just to see what was different. One of them really caught my attention. We exchanged a few texts and decided to meet later that day, an hour's drive from my house. As soon as we met, I felt an instant connection. We decided to stay for a drink and continue chatting. Everything went very well. We had dinner and then went to a bar until it closed. In the end, we kissed and promised to meet again on the weekend. At the end of our 5th date, we were smitten with each other. She knows everything about my soon-to-be ex-wife. Honestly, she knows everything about me. I feel as if I've known her my whole life. If this sounds like an over-the-top restoration or fix, I've thought about it a lot. We both had our own wounds. She had just gone through a breakup, and we were both rational enough to come to the conclusion that we had healed those wounds. We weren't looking for anything serious, but everything made a lot of sense from every angle. We agreed that it would be foolish not to try again, and eventually she invited me to live with her in her country. We spent 5 days together. At that moment, I didn't hesitate for a second. This was 2.5 months ago. We had been living together for 3 weeks. Everything we felt and believed about each other was confirmed over and over again. We have so much in common that it's scary. Even though we live in different cultures, we are ultimately so similar. The previous relationship ended because it wasn't meant to be, and I avoided a huge amount of trouble. I don't think I would have met this new person without my previous traumatic experiences. If you feel this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stories like these will help you reflect and discover valuable lessons in life. Don't forget to share these stories with your friends and family so they can also feel and learn from the emotional messages we want to convey. Let us accompany you on your journey to find peace and happiness in life. When I look back at this story, I can't help but feel a change within myself. That's life. There are times when we fall into despair, but it is in those moments that we discover our true value. Betrayal is not the end, it is a new beginning where we become stronger, more confident, and learn to love ourselves again. This is the biggest lesson we can learn from this story. And when you look back at your life, remember that no matter how many challenges come your way, you always have the strength to rise up and keep moving forward. If this story makes you reflect on life and the relationships around you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive more touching and meaningful stories. We will always be here sharing valuable messages for you to find faith and motivation in life.